I never thought the person who would betray me most would share my blood. When my son Jake needed heart surgery, I had scraped together $27,000 over 2 years of brutal overtime and sacrifice. Every penny was for my 8-year-old boy. Then my cousin Amanda moved in after losing her job. I trusted her completely, even showed her where I kept the emergency fund. That decision would almost cost my son his life. If only I had known what she was capable of. Before I tell you how my own family stabbed me in the back, take a second to hit like and subscribe, and let me know in the comments where you are watching from. Trust me, you will want to hear how someone could steal money meant to save a child, and the justice that eventually came knocking on her door. 3 years ago, I lost my wife Sarah to cancer. The doctors gave her 6 months, but she only lasted 3. Just like that, I became a single dad to Jake, our beautiful 5-year-old son. While dealing with grief, I also had to face the reality that Jake was born with a congenital heart condition. The doctors had been monitoring it since birth, but they warned me he would eventually need surgery. Insurance would only cover part of the procedure. The rest, a whopping $35,000, would come out of my pocket. I worked construction during the day and took shifts at the local hardware store evenings. Every extra dollar went straight into savings. I cut everything unnecessary from our budget. No cable TV, no eating out, no new clothes. Jake never complained even when his friends got the latest video games or went to summer camps he could not afford. By the time Jake turned 8, his condition worsened. Climbing a flight of stairs left him winded, and his lips sometimes turned blue during physical activity. The cardiologist said we could not postpone the surgery much longer. Thankfully, I had managed to save $27,000 by then, just $8,000 short of our goal. The surgery was scheduled for 3 months later, giving me time to earn the rest. That same month, my cousin Amanda called. We had grown up close, almost like siblings, though we drifted apart in adulthood. She had been crushing it in finance in New York until suddenly losing her job in a company restructure. She needed a place to stay while getting back on her feet. Just temporarily, she promised. I hesitated at first. Our 2-bedroom house was small, and having another adult would strain our already tight budget. But Amanda was family, and she sounded desperate. She offered to help with Jake and household chores while job hunting. So I cleared out our tiny home office, set up an air mattress, and welcomed her into our home. The first few weeks were great. Amanda was fantastic with Jake, helping him with homework and cooking meals I never had time to make. She kept the house clean and even started a small vegetable garden in our backyard. Jake adored her, especially when she taught him card games and chess. About a month after she moved in, I had to leave for an overnight construction job 2 hours away. I worried about emergencies while I was gone. What if Jake had a heart episode? What if something happened and they needed money right away? So I made a decision I would forever regret. I showed Amanda where I kept our savings in a small safe hidden in my bedroom closet and gave her the combination. Just in case of emergency, I told her. The $27,000 represented countless overtime hours, missed weekends with Jake, and the promise of his healthy future. Amanda seemed touched by my trust. She hugged me tight and promised she would guard it with her life. I believed her completely. The following weeks continued smoothly. Amanda had a few job interviews and seemed positive about her prospects. She even offered to contribute to groceries from her savings. I declined, knowing how hard unemployment could be. I told her to focus on landing a new position first. 2 months before Jake's scheduled surgery, I decided to check our savings and finalize payment arrangements with the hospital. The administrator needed a deposit, and I wanted to count exactly how much more I needed to earn. I unlocked the safe, reaching for the envelope where I kept the cash. The envelope felt light, too light. I opened it certain I was imagining things, but there was no denying what I saw. Only $9,000 remained. $18,000, more than 2/3 of our surgery fund, had vanished. My mind raced through possibilities. Had I miscounted? Had I moved some of the money elsewhere and forgotten? I tore through the house, checking every hiding spot I might have used. Nothing. Finally, I called Amanda, who had left early that morning for what she said was a job interview. She did not answer the first 3 calls. When she finally picked up, something in her voice immediately told me what I did not want to believe. I asked her to meet me at the coffee shop near our house. I could not risk having this conversation in front of Jake. When she walked in, she looked different. designer sunglasses perched on her head, a new handbag on her arm. Purchases that would have been normal for the old Amanda from New York, but impossible for someone unemployed for months. I cut straight to the question. Where was the money? She denied it, at first looking offended that I would accuse her. But when I stared at her without speaking, her expression changed. She shrugged as if we were discussing borrowed sugar instead of my son's life-saving fund. Yes, she had taken the money. She needed it for a fresh start. A big opportunity had come up, and she had to invest in herself. Her exact words haunt me to this day. When I reminded her what that money was for, she actually smiled, as if I were overreacting. Then she said it. He will be fine. Kids heal fast. She pulled out her phone and showed me her screen. Airline tickets to Paris, hotel reservations, a full itinerary of shopping and sightseeing, my son's surgery money funding her European vacation. She had the audacity to tell me she would pay me back eventually once she was back on her feet, that this trip would help her network and find opportunities, that she had done me a favor by living with us and helping with Jake. I sat there speechless, unable to process the depth of this betrayal, not just from any person, but from family, from someone I had welcomed into my home, someone who knew exactly what that money meant to Jake. The drive home from the coffee shop was a blur. I pulled over twice because I could not see through my tears. Rage, fear, and disbelief crashed over me in waves. How could someone do this to an innocent child? How could Amanda look me in the eyes? After what she had done, walking into the house, I had to compose myself. Jake bounded over for a hug, telling me about the science project Amanda had helped him with before she left. I smiled mechanically, not wanting to burden him with adult problems. But inside, panic was setting in. Without that money, we could not proceed with the surgery on schedule. That night after Jake went to bed, I sat at the kitchen table with a calculator, bank statements, and a notepad. I needed $18,000 in less than 2 months. My regular income barely covered our living expenses. Even with maximum overtime, I could not earn that much so quickly. I did not sleep that night, or the night after. When I called the surgical coordinator to discuss our options, her voice turned clinical as she explained the risks of postponement. Jake's condition could deteriorate rapidly. Complications could develop. The longer we waited, the more dangerous the procedure would become. Despite my efforts to hide my distress, Jake noticed. "Dad, are you mad at Aunt Amanda?" he asked over breakfast. "She left in a hurry yesterday and did not say goodbye." The perceptiveness of children never ceases to amaze me. I told him a partial truth, that Amanda had decided to travel for a while. The disappointment on his face added another layer to my pain. I filed a police report that afternoon. The officer listened sympathetically but explained the challenges. Since I had given Amanda the combination voluntarily, it became a civil matter, not criminal theft. Without written evidence that the money was specifically for Jake's surgery, it would be difficult to pursue. Even if we did, legal proceedings could take months or years' time Jake did not have. I called Amanda repeatedly. After the first few calls went to voicemail, she blocked my number. I reached out to mutual family members explaining the situation. Their reactions split our family down the middle. Some were horrified and offered what little they could to help. Others suggested I might have misunderstood or exaggerated, that Amanda would never do something so callous. Small claims court had a limit below the amount stolen and would take too long anyway. I applied for a personal loan, but my credit had taken hits from medical bills after Sarah's death. The bank declined my application within hours. 2 weeks after the theft, Jake came home from school, more tired than usual. He barely touched his dinner and went to bed early. In the middle of the night, I found him sitting up, struggling to catch his breath, his lips tinged blue. I rushed him to the emergency room, my heart pounding with terror the entire drive. The doctor who examined him did not sugarcoat it. Jake's condition was deteriorating faster than expected. Postponing the surgery was no longer an option. We needed to proceed within weeks, not months. As Jake dozed in the hospital bed, monitors beeping steadily beside him, he looked smaller and more fragile than ever. He woke briefly, fixing those innocent eyes on me. "Dad," he whispered, "am I going to die like Mom?" The question shattered my heart. I promised him that would not happen, that I would fix everything somehow, that he would be running and playing again soon. I just did not know how to make that promise come true. Desperate times call for desperate measures. I sold my truck first, the one I needed for work, and started carpooling with a coworker. Next went my professional tools, which I replaced with cheaper versions that hurt my productivity. I took out payday loans with astronomical interest rates. I sold furniture, electronics, even the wedding ring I had kept after Sarah died. A coworker who knew our situation started an online fundraiser. The response was heartwarming, but nowhere near what we needed. I approached my boss about a second mortgage, only to learn my house had insufficient equity. I worked so much overtime that I nearly collapsed from exhaustion on a job site. Through social media, I made a public plea that tagged Amanda's friends. I detailed exactly what she had done and asked them to speak to her conscience. Most ignored it, but a few expressed shock. None could help reach her, as she had apparently told everyone she was unreachable on her much-needed sabbatical. Every night I would sit beside Jake's bed until he fell asleep, then retreat to the kitchen table to crunch numbers again, searching for some financial solution that never materialized. All the while a clock ticked in my head, counting down to a deadline I could not miss. 3 weeks after Amanda disappeared with our money, her social media account suddenly came alive. Photos of her posing in front of the Eiffel Tower, videos of lavish meals in Parisian cafes, shopping bags from luxury stores. In every image, she looked carefree and delighted with herself, as if the money had been hers all along. Something in me snapped. I commented publicly on one of her posts. How nice to see my son's heart surgery fund being enjoyed in Paris. He says hi from the hospital. Within hours, my phone exploded with notifications. Friends of Amanda messaging me with shock. Family members I had not spoken to in years calling for details. The post had been shared hundreds of times with strangers expressing outrage on our behalf. One of those calls came from Uncle Robert, Amanda's father. Initially, he called to chastise me for publicly shaming his daughter. But as I calmly laid out the facts, his tone changed from defensive to horrified. He demanded proof, so I sent him hospital documents, photos of Jake in the emergency room, and screenshots of Amanda's admissions in text. What I did not know then was that Uncle Robert immediately called an emergency family meeting, notably excluding me. The family had always known Amanda struggled with impulse control, but the extent of this betrayal shocked even her staunchest defenders. 2 days later, Uncle Robert and Aunt Linda showed up at my door. They looked exhausted and aged. Without preamble, Uncle Robert handed me an envelope containing $10,000. They had sold their second car and borrowed against their retirement to raise what they could immediately. It was not the full amount, but it was a start. They also shared something Amanda had hidden from everyone. Her job loss had not been due to restructuring. She had been fired for gambling with company funds, a problem she had concealed for years. The Paris trip was just another escape from consequences, funded this time by my son's future. That same week, Jake collapsed during PE class. His teacher called an ambulance, and I met them at the hospital. The cardiologist was blunt after examining him. Jake needed surgery within days, not weeks. His heart could not wait any longer. I broke down in the hospital chapel, something I had not done since Sarah died. The weight of potentially losing my son crushed me. A nurse found me there and gently suggested I speak with the hospital's financial aid department. I had been denied before due to owning a home and having some income, but Jake's critical condition might change things. The financial counselor listened to our story with growing alarm. She helped me apply for emergency assistance and spoke to the surgical team about payment plans. It would cover part of our shortfall, but not all. With the partial funding from Jake's grandparents and the hospital assistance, we were close but still short. That is when I made a decision. I hired a lawyer with borrowed money, explaining that the traditional legal timeline would not work for us. We needed an emergency judgment against Amanda. The lawyer was skeptical but moved by Jake's situation. He agreed to file for an emergency hearing and worked through the night preparing documents. He also advised me to prepare for Amanda's return. Through her social media, I tracked her flight home. The day she landed, I was waiting outside her apartment building. She froze when she saw me, designer shopping bags still in hand. "We need to talk," I said calmly. "And this time I am recording our conversation for the court." Her facade cracked. Inside her apartment, surrounded by new purchases, she alternated between defiance and excuses. But eventually, with the recorder running, she admitted taking the money, knowing it was for Jake's surgery. She claimed she would have replaced it eventually, but had no concrete plan for doing so. I laid out her options: full repayment plus interest immediately, or I would press criminal charges for theft and child endangerment. My lawyer had found precedent for similar cases where knowledge of a child's medical needs made the theft more severe. "You cannot prove anything," she said weakly. I played back her recorded confession. Her face went pale. "You have 24 hours," I told her, "or the recording goes to the police, the prosecutor, and every family member and friend you have." As I left, she was already calling her parents in panic. The next morning, Uncle Robert called. Amanda had confessed everything to her parents. They were mortified and determined to make things right. They had contacted their bank about a home equity loan to cover the remaining amount plus the interest and legal fees I demanded. "She needs help, Chet," Uncle Robert said, voice breaking. "Real help. We did not see it before, but this gambling addiction has consumed her. We are getting her into a treatment program, and she will face consequences." 2 days later, the full amount appeared in my bank account. That same day, Jake was admitted for his surgery. The procedure was scheduled for 7 the next morning. I spent that night beside his hospital bed watching him sleep. The fear of losing him overwhelmed me, but there was also relief that we had overcome the financial hurdle. As I held his small hand, I thought about the bizarre journey we had been forced to take, all because someone who should have protected him had chosen selfishness instead. The surgery took 8 hours, the longest 8 hours of my life. When the surgeon finally emerged, his face told me everything before he spoke a word. The procedure had been successful. Jake would need careful monitoring and rehabilitation, but he would recover. Seeing my son in post-op pale but alive, tubes and wires connecting him to machines, I finally allowed myself to break down. Not from sadness this time, but from profound relief and gratitude. During Jake's 2-week hospital stay, I learned that Amanda had been court-ordered to perform community service at the Children's Hospital as part of the agreement to avoid criminal charges. Her parents had made her surrender her passport and credit cards and enrolled her in intensive therapy for gambling addiction. I did not want to see her, but one day she appeared in the doorway of Jake's room while he was sleeping. She looked nothing like the confident woman who had flaunted her Paris trip. Her designer clothes were replaced with simple jeans, and a sweater, her face stripped of makeup, eyes hollow with shame. "I do not expect forgiveness," she said quietly. "I just needed to see that he is okay." I nodded toward Jake's sleeping form but said nothing. She left a card on the table and walked away. Inside was a handwritten apology I was not yet ready to read. The road to recovery was long for all of us. Jake needed physical therapy to regain his strength. His chest hurt, and he tired easily. But each day brought improvement. The blue tinge to his lips disappeared. He could climb stairs without stopping to catch his breath. His laugh returned, full-bodied and unrestricted. Meanwhile, I established firm boundaries with extended family. Trust once broken could not be instantly repaired. I opened proper bank accounts for Jake's future needs and educational fund. No more cash in the house safe. I created legal documents specifying exactly who could make decisions for Jake if anything happened to me. The extended family had been forced to confront uncomfortable truths about enabling Amanda's behavior over the years. Small incidents they had dismissed as impulsiveness or bad luck now appeared as warning signs they had ignored. This reckoning changed family dynamics permanently. What surprised me most was the community that formed around us during recovery. My coworkers pooled resources to replace the professional tools I had sold, saying they needed me working at full capacity. Our neighbor, Mrs. Wilson, a retired teacher, offered to watch Jake after school during his recovery. My boss rearranged schedules to give me more daytime hours and less evening work. In the hospital, Jake befriended another heart patient, a 10-year-old girl named Sophia. Their shared experience created a bond that helped both children process what they had been through. Watching them compare scars without shame taught me something about resilience. 6 months after the surgery, Amanda reached out again. She had completed her initial treatment and wanted to make amends properly. She had been working a retail job, living with her parents, and attending daily support meetings. The transformation seemed genuine. I agreed to meet her in a public park. Jake was having a play date so we could talk without him present. The woman who approached me bore little resemblance to either the desperate cousin who had arrived at our doorstep or the callous thief who had justified stealing from a child. "I will spend the rest of my life making this right," she said. "Not just the money which my parents should never have had to repay for me, but the breach of trust, the risk to Jake's life, the family I damaged." I did not offer easy forgiveness. That would have been dishonest. Instead, I told her that actions speak louder than words, and time would tell if she was truly changed. She accepted this with grace I would not have expected a year earlier. 1 year after the surgery, we celebrated Jake's full recovery with a small gathering. Looking around at the people who had supported us, I realized how much this ordeal had taught me about who I could truly count on. Some relationships had been irreparably damaged, but others had strengthened beyond what I thought possible. I learned that family is not always defined by blood. Sometimes it is the coworker who drives you to work for months while you save for another vehicle. Sometimes it is the neighbor who brings homemade soup when your child is recovering. Sometimes it is the nurse who stays past her shift to make sure your son is comfortable. I also learned about the power of standing up for what matters. Had I not pursued Amanda aggressively, had I not been willing to expose her behavior publicly, Jake might not be alive today. Sometimes fighting back is the only option, especially when protecting those who cannot protect themselves. The hardest lesson was about forgiveness, not the quick, easy kind that pretends harm never happened, but the complicated, ongoing process of deciding how much energy to spend on anger versus healing. I may never fully forgive Amanda, but I have released much of the bitterness that once consumed me. Today, Jake is a healthy, active 9-year-old with a bright future ahead. His scar has faded to a thin line, a reminder of both his vulnerability and his strength. When he asks about Amanda, I tell him a version of the truth appropriate for his age. That sometimes people make terrible mistakes, and part of growing up is learning how to make amends and how to protect yourself from being hurt again. Has your family ever betrayed your trust in a way that seemed unforgivable? How did you handle it, and were you able to find healing afterward? Let me know in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please consider subscribing and sharing it with someone who might be facing their own family struggles. Remember, sometimes, the people we need to set boundaries with are the ones who share our blood. Thank you for listening, and I wish you strength if you are navigating your own difficult family situations right now.